I am Dr. Pavitra Bharadwaj. I work as an associate professor in the Computer Science Department of Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi. So friends, we have been taking up different topics from the computer science discipline and doing series of lectures on each of them. And now today we are going to start from this lecture, we are going to start with a new series which is on Python programming. I am sure we are all very excited to learn Python, to know more about Python and how it can be used. Now we all know that the Python is becoming the buzzword, and it is strongly created a very great interest in researchers, in programmers, right, and in developers alike. Now we see that whoever is working in the realm of machine learning, or they are working in the realm of data mining, or you are working in the realm of deep learning, somewhere or the other you have its connections rooted with Python. So therefore, Python programming has become an essential skill not just for computer science students, but for students or for learners in general. So even the students of other disciplines of humanities and commerce and science disciplines are showing keen interest in learning Python programming. So therefore, keeping all this in mind, we are now going to start this series on Python, where we are going to start from the beginners level, from an introductory level, and then we will gradually migrate or gradually move towards the advanced concepts of Python. So this course, basically today's lecture is going to be an introductory lecture, where we are going to talk about the basics of Python, where Python can be used, what are the reasons for the gaining popularity of this programming language, how Python can be used as a modular language, or how it can be used as a script. And we will also talk about some basic data elements or some basic data types which Python provides. We will also see how Python is different from other object oriented languages which we have or we might have learned so far, like C or C++. So that is also an important element where we will go on contrasting our knowledge of the previously earned languages, previously learnt languages like C and C++, and how Python is similar or dissimilar to the languages that we already know. So therefore, this is an introductory session, and then we will move on to, later on we will move on to data visualization and analytics using Python. We are going to talk about those aspects also as we move on in this series. So Python is a rather new language, and it was invented in Netherlands in the early 1990s. So it is not as old, and the name Python is because of the scientist, one of the scientists who worked in the team. His name was also having this Python. So therefore, we have been talking about open source languages, and we have been talking a lot about open source software, and we have been we know about free and open source software. So Python is one language which has been open source from the very beginning. So for those who are still unfamiliar with the term, we would understand that software or programming languages, they can come as a proprietary model in which the source code or the the main files of the code are hidden from the user, and you have to pay a license. There is a license which you have to download, and most of the times you have to pay for the license, and you just get to use the software. Whereas there are other softwares and other languages which are available as open source. So you get to see the source files, and therefore a large number of changes can be made according to the need of the user. So the source file, because it is available freely downloadable on the internet, therefore we say that this is open sourced, from open sourced files or free and open source software, because one, they are available without any license fee. Of course there is a license, but it is available freely, you do not have to pay something for that. And then this is also the source file or the documentation file, or the file which determines the programming standard or which determines how the software is going to work. All those files are also available for programmers to see, so they can make changes to that file, and that is the reason why these softwares are constantly evolving. Like for example, if you talk about Microsoft Office, now Microsoft Office is a proprietary software because the license is available, you have to purchase the license from Microsoft in order to use Microsoft Office. And also when you have the software on your system, you cannot make changes to the basic structure of the software because you do not have the source file. So, you cannot change the software, you can use it as is. Whereas Open Office, if you look at, so Open Office is a software which is open sourced. So, therefore, you download the source file of the software and you can also make changes to it. So, this is how the open sourced system works, open source or proprietary system works. So, Python has since beginning been open source. So, whenever you download Python, you can actually download the source file also, and therefore, Python is constantly evolving, it is constantly growing and it is becoming smarter and it is becoming more user friendly and it can be adapted by most of the people according to their needs. It can be customized according to the requirements and preferences of the programmers. So, we also say that sometimes Python is a scripting language, like we had done JavaScript and we had done other scripting languages which we say can be a part of a main program. So, likewise Python can also work in the form of a scripting language, but it can also work in the form of standalone programs or a modular program also. So, therefore, Python is a very strong programming language because it is capable of being executed in both the modes. It is highly scalable and of course, it is an object oriented language and it is very functional. Therefore, Python has been used by tech giants like Google from the very beginning and it is increasing in its popularity day by day. So, Python documentation is actually available. If you want to know more about the version of Python that you want, so you can go on docs.python.org and from there you can see the documentation of the Python. So, whichever version of Python you want to use, the latest version or whichever version you want to use, so the complete documentation and the source files are available on python.org for the user to download, to read and to save on one's own computer. That is why Python is therefore gaining more and more popularity. Also, the Python tutorials for that matter are available on python.org, which makes learning Python very easy, okay, because you can directly look at the tutorial and try to learn the language from the authentic source, that is the main website, the python.org. So, these are few reasons which have made Python very important and very user friendly in its approach. Besides this, it is very easy to learn. If you have even the slightest exposure to any programming language or if you do not have any exposure to programming that for that matter, then also you can easily learn Python because the syntax is extremely simple. It is very simple, okay. It is highly scalable, as we already said. It can be very easy to maintain and it is very powerful when you want high productivity system to be created. And Python has got one of the richest libraries, so that a lot of the programming effort of the programmer is spared and the user can directly use or import the library functions into his or her program and make the best use of it. And it also provides an interactive front end, because I said that it provides a lot of visualization is possible using Python. So, therefore, you can also use it, you can also amalgamate your Python code with your Fortran or C or C++ code which may be still running. So, the Python can easily be used in collaboration with an existing language. It is highly object oriented. So, we know that in object oriented all the entities will be considered or will be created or will be treated like standalone objects, and their data and their methods are there with which you can use. And also earlier versions are there of Python which were used as a scripting language, and now you also have it in a full form or modular language. So, both the versions are there, therefore, it makes the language universal in its appeal. It can be used from very large scale programming setups to very basic learning kind of hands on kinds of simple programs. So, Python therefore is becoming an imperative because one, it will reduce the development time for the software. The code length in case of Python is very less as compared to other codes which are written. It is very easy to learn and use for software developers. The codes are very easy to understand, the codes are highly readable, and because it can be worked on collaborative platforms. So, therefore, team projects are very easy to be done using the Python language, and we also said that it can be easily glued to programs of other programming language. So, you can extend your Python code to other languages also. So, because of all these reasons, Python has become very popular and it is becoming day by day more imperative to use and to learn Python. So, Python these days is used, as I just said, it can be used in a multitude of application. You can find various innumerable applications where Python will be of use. For example, in case of system management, the code can be written, the simple scripts can be written using Python. In creating the GUIs for C or C++ or Fortran programs, the visual Python is being used a lot. Then in internet programming for scripting, server side scripting also Python can be incorporated. Then data analytics and can also be done using Python. So, Python is becoming a very popular database programming. Then text data processing, because Python has got different types of data structures which can be manipulated using library functions. So, therefore, in text data processing also Python is gaining a lot of popularity and significance. Then in distributed processing and numerical operations, because Python has got, as I just said, Python has got one of the richest libraries for numerical functions. So, it can be used for large scale numerical operations, for scientific operations, and of course, for creating interesting graphics. Python can be a very good tool for creating that kind of environment, graphical kind of environment can be done. So, this was a background of why and what is the purpose of Python and why should one be learning the Python and where are you going to apply your knowledge. So, it is very clear that across platforms, across applications, Python will hold its relevance, and therefore, it is very important to gain the skills in programming using the Python environment. So, if you want to run the Python, so basically Python implementations come in both the versions. So, you can have an interpreted version as well as a compiled version. Now, what is the difference between interpreted and compiled? I am sure those who are familiar with programming, they know it, but just to clarify once again, interpreted version means that it will be a line by line translation. So, when a program is written in an interpreted environment in Python, the program is executed or the program runs after every line, whereas in a compiled version you can write the complete code and you can run it in one single go. So, Python can work in both the formats. You can have you can run it in the IDLE or you can run it in the command line. So, the command line basically will work in the interpreted format, and the integrated development learning environment can work in both the formats. It can work in the interpreted format also, as well as it can work in the compiled format also. So, interactive interface to Python is provided with a read eval print loop. So, the program will read, it will evaluate the statement and then it will print the results of the statement. So, this is how the interactive interface works on. So, the user is constantly responded to, or the user constantly gets a feedback from the system, therefore, the environment becomes very highly interpreted. So, if we look at this example, so this is where this is how the Python interpreter works. Of course, this is an example of the Linux system, right. So, basically here you will, here we are using a function called the square function, and we are defining the function. So, we are just simply running and we are returning x into x, and then we are running the function for a number of values. So, you are calling the function square for 1, 2, 3 and 4. So, this you can consider, this is like an array. We will look at this type of data later on in detail, but for the moment we can say that this works something similar to an array. So, this is actually creating the squares of the numbers or of the elements within the array. So, this is a very simple environment where, very simple example where we can see how the Python interpreter is working in the interactive environment. So, the moment you press the enter key, you get the result, and the 3 signs that you are seeing, the 3 caret signs or the greater than signs which you are seeing here, this shows the Python prompt. Basically, this shows the place where the typing is to be done. So, if we talk about how to install Python, now Python is pre-installed in most of the Unix systems, like in Linux systems also, and also in the Mac OS. So, the pre-installed version may not be the most recent one, right. So, we may have to download the recent version from python.org. So, python.org/download is the place where you go and you get the latest version of Python downloaded, and it will also come with a large library of standard modules. So, along when you download the Python, the latest version, it will automatically have the library downloaded onto the system. Now, when you look at the installation part, so there are several options for when you are installing. So, you can have an integrated development environment, which is, in short, we call it as an IDE, right. So, when you are installing for Windows, you will use the IDLE. So, the IDLE system, which is also called as integrated development environment, right. The L actually is a part of the development, and it will work well with the Windows. On a Windows machine, we will always install the IDLE. Then you can also have the Emacs with the Python mode or whichever text editor you want, and you can also have the Eclipse with the PyDev. So, any of these can be used. You can use the IDLE, or you can use the Emacs, or you can use the Eclipse, but most popular environment when you are working on the Python in Windows remains the IDLE. So, we will be using the IDLE as our standard, for showing all the examples of that you are running. So, when we are using the IDLE, it is, what is it? It is an integrated environment, development environment, okay, which is used on Windows, and it provides us with a multi-window text editor. And here the syntax highlighting, auto completion, smart indent and many other features are given for the user, which can make the running and typing of the Python code simpler and very easier and faster for any kind of user. So, the IDLE, therefore, we say is a very, very highly preferred environment for the user. So, here we have the Python shell, okay, we have the script highlighting is shown, and we also have an integrated debugger. So, you have the stepping, and you have breakpoints, and you can also call the stack visibility in this kind of environment. So, what you see here on the screen is actually a screenshot of the Python IDLE environment, IDLE development environment, where you can see that the colors or the different colors are used to show, and whenever you are typing, then your syntax is also shown, so that there is less chance of making a syntactical error. Now, when you are actually saving a file, so Python files are usually saved with a .py extension. So, .py is the extension which is given for a simple Python file. If you are saving it in the form of an executable file, then we do not give an extension. So, if it is a simple program that you are writing, you will give a .py extension. If it is a module, we will be talking about how modules can be given, can be written. The module will also be saved using the .py extension, but the executable files will not have the .py extension. Though the executable file will simply be saved by the name without any extension. So, whenever it will be clicked, automatically it will be detected and it will be executed. So, when you are using, so we just saw how you can use or how you can run the Python code in your IDLE. You can also edit the Python in the Emacs code. So, Emacs also provides you with a Python mode and is a good option for editing Python, okay, and by default all the files in the Emacs will be saved by the .py extension. So, this screenshot also shows how it can be done using the Emacs. So, here also it has similar features like the IDLE, like you will have syntax syntax will be highlighted, auto completion will be there, symbol help will be there, okay, and it will, the other features are also there, but still it is considered as an inferior interpreter shell than IDLE. So, therefore, IDLE is more popular when you are talking about the Python development environments than other kinds of environments. So, as we said that Python can be run on all types of operating system. We just saw how it runs on the Linux operating system. Again, on Unix, if you want to run Python, so you will have the percentage sign and the prompt remains the same. So, the Python prompt is the 3 greater than signs, and if you want to exit the Python but not the IDLE, like you do not want to close the IDLE but you just want to exit from Python. So, then there are shortcuts for that also, like if you are using Windows, so then you will use Ctrl Z and enter. So, that is going to close Python, but your IDLE or the integrated development learning environment will keep on running. So, this is basically an example that we see, and we are going to run, this is a full-fledged program and this is going to be saved with the name fact.py. So, this is actually calculating the factorial of the number and we are doing it using a function. So, the file here is saved with the name fact.py and we have defined a function called fact, right. Now, you can see there are certain syntaxes which are there in this program. We will talk about these differently, but at the moment what we need to look at is how the program has been created and how it has been saved with a particular name. So, this fact.py file now can be directly executed using the IDLE or it can be directly run. This is the point we are trying to make, that Python can be saved in the form of a script with the py extension, in the form of a module with the py extension. So, friends, we will be continuing our discussion on Python and its important features. Till then, please keep watching CEC. Thank you.